Cloud.
Yeah. It tells me you're recording. Good.
We're doing it. All right.
All right.
Got who do we have here?
You've got Stephen Dagger, originally of West Lafayette, now of Richmond, Virginia.
Is that Stephen with a B?
No, Stephen with a PH.
No D on there?
Mm-mm. Oh yeah. Stephen with the PhD, Dr. Dagger.
Yeah.
That's me.
So you're not really the first doctor in the Daggers, right?
No, it was passed on to me by one RT, Ryan Taylor. This is one of the last things he said to me was Dr. Day, and I didn't have it yet. So I was like, no, you can't say that.
That's cool. So we're going to talk about the old days.
Yes.
Let's start with how'd you get into skateboarding? Where did you first board at?
How I got interested in skateboarding the way many kids did in the late 80s, which was by watching Police Academy 4 and Back to the Future and just seeing those movies, and it just looked so awesome. And then my buddy in 5th grade, Chris Green, told me that there were other skate movies I could watch, like Gleaming the Cube. So I watched that, and I just really wanted to skate. So my dad made my brother and me both pay half for Veriflex skateboards from Target, which we got. So I had my Veriflex board, which I got in 1990, and my brother and I would like have races in the driveway. That's how I started skating.
Which brother?
Brother Peter.
So Peter was a skater originally.
Peter was the original skater. Yeah, he kept it up for a year or two, and then he became a total jock and only played basketball. And then my third brother Timmy eventually became a good skater, and the littlest one, Bubba, he never skated.
Did Peter ever learn to ollie?
I think he did have an ollie actually, but that was about it. He usually skated barefoot. Actually, he had a Land Shark Veriflex, and I had a Tomcat Veriflex. And then when they opened up a skate shop right when I started skateboarding, Backstreet Boards. So I went down there and asked the guy who was always there, Jay Buck, if I wanted a new skateboard, which one should I get? And he pointed out the H Street Colby Carter and said it was the best board. I was there with my friend Steve that I started skating with. And Steve and I had this big competition to see who could get the H Street Colby Carter first, which Jay said was the best board. And I remember one day after school racing over there, like running and taking all my money and buying the board, and then like going home and calling up Steve on the phone and being like, oh, I just got that 8th Street Colby Carter at Backstreet Boards, and I just called to say, in your face. I shouted at him. He hung up on me. We didn't talk for a while, and he went down to Backstreet Boards where Jay Buck reassured him that this other board, this blind, was just as good as the Colby Carter. And I learned years later, of course, that Jay just said that to young kids to move a board that wasn't moving already, you know, like the two boards that were there the longest, like he'd tell little kids it was the best board. It worked out for everybody.
Do you know what kind of trucks and wheels you got on that board?
Well, at first I transferred my Veriflex ones over.
Oh, so actually, like plastic. Were they plastic?
Well, yeah, and actually one of my wheels split in two. One of my plastic wheels split in two. And so I bought I think some GNS trucks off of Chris's big brother. Like all I knew about skateboarding came from Chris and his brothers. They lived at Married Student Housing, and so they got me loaned me issues of Thrasher and stuff like that. So that's how I knew. His name is Chris Green. He moved to Indianapolis, so he didn't really stick around the Lafayette scene. But yeah, I didn't know much about skateboarding. Like I feel kind of stunted in my skateboard growth because I just skated with my close friends and I didn't know the scene very well. I just kind of dipped in and out of it for several years.
So you ended up getting this H Street in your friend's face. Do you remember the first time you ran into skaters in the wild, like maybe at the Village, what that was like? Was it intimidating?
Oh, wow, dude. So intimidating. Like I remember the second board that I got, it had clear grip tape and it said blind on the top. And I met Larry and Sega actually. And I knew that skaters always asked you what board you had. So I was just so scared. and I was ready to perform. And I remember Sega asked me like, what kind of board you had. And I was glad that I had an actual skateboard then. So I said, I've got like a blind, like Jeremy Ray or something like that. And I remember him going, Jeremy Ray doesn't skate for blind. And I remember just like, I felt like all my insides turned into liquid. And it turned out that what had happened was Chris's brother, who sold me the board, had put a blind sticker on the top of the board and then covered it with clear grit. So it was a sticker, not the actual board. So
So
that was one of my, yeah, I think, yeah. I also remember going to the McDonald's on State Street in West Side with my friends and seeing a bunch of the big skaters there, the Backstreet Board skaters. And I remember them saying like, hey, what's up, Steven, what's your PH? And I remember trying to talk and they're like, Steven, you look nervous with us. Are you scared of us? And I remember saying, I just don't know what to do with my hands. I was so scared of those guys. One more story about that, actually. I went down to, so Chris moved to Indianapolis. So must have been 92 or something. And he was showing me these skateboard videos. We watched first like Secondhand Smoke, Plan B, and then we watched Naptown Pride, the Indianapolis video. And so, and I recognized from Naptown Pride, they had little Larry Gibson had a couple tricks in it. So as far as and I knew that Larry lived in Lafayette and he was the only guy from that video I knew. So as far as I knew, like the best skaters, like there was Tony Hawk and Christian, who so I knew were the best, but right below that was like like Danny Way, Colin McKay, Buddy Best, and Larry Gibson were like, for me, were like on the same level. Like that's where I was in my knowledge of the scene at the time.
We got the money.
Okay, I'm doing something.
What's up, kids?
We aren't table.
Okay, go shut the doors, and you guys shut this door. Shut this door.
We aren't
Hey, Saxon and Huxton, scram.
Beat it, you loud jerks. Better kick over their jam box.
Yeah. Well, I was really isolated in skateboarding, like for several years. I was not that much part of the scene. I just like went to the village and went to Purdue with my friends and played video games and stuff like that. But I didn't have many videos. I didn't know that much.
So Larry, Buddy Best were the same level as Danny Way.
Yeah, they totally were, just because, they were the guys I saw in the videos, As far as I was concerned, all videos were kind of the same,
Do you remember the first time you skated like the stage?
I don't remember the first time. I mean, it was really early because I grew up in West Lafayette, so even before I skated, and my parents let me wander around. So I went with my non-skater friends, like on our bikes or on foot. We went to the village, the stage, the subtunnels, Purdue. I mean, I was there when I was like 9 and 10 years old in the late 80s. I hardly ever left West Lafayette. Yeah.
You don't remember like your first session there? Like you saw some older kids going off of it or anything?
I remember some early ones. Like I remember, you know what? I remember at Backstreet Boards, I saw Matt Ross do a front side kickflip. And I remember it looked kind of like a Muska flip, like it went up in the air or it might've been a hard flip or something, a pressure flip. And I tried to copy it, but the best I could come up with was like a shove it kick flip, or just a shove it body varial. And so I remember going like, that's what I thought the trick was. So I remember going to the stage and trying to pull one of those, and I actually did one down the 2-stair. But for me, like that was what a flip trick was.
It's kind of like when Nate used to do those as his front side kick flips. Remember, he do like a pop shove it,
Yeah.
body rear the opposite direction.
And actually, Roddy Rice, the Rice family, lived on the other side of my block, so I could see their house from my backyard. But Roddy, I was in the same grade as his younger brother Tony, but Roddy Rice, he was like an old guy skater. So for me, like all that was out of my league. I remember one time he came over to my driveway and I busted that trick out, the pop shove it body varial, and I landed it perfectly. And I was so proud. And he gave me props. So
that's nice. So you never really got to skate with him on the streets though?
No, I gotta say, like, I really feel like I missed out on that stuff. Like all those guys like that skated at West Side, like Jim Enos, Chris Bloom, his younger brother was in my class too. Roddy Rice, like I would see those guys sometimes, but yeah, they were all kind of out of my league,
Yeah,
I would just skate the Morton School stairs, and really like I would just like my friend would be on his bike and I'd be on my skateboard. My dad built me a jump ramp, which was so tall, it was like hip high. And so like it was so weird because I knew little enough about skateboarding that even for like 2 years, like I didn't know that a 180 was an easy trick. Like I never did a front side 180 because I thought that was like a vert trick, but I could do an indie grab like off of really tall things because I did those on my jump ramp. So like indie grab off the stage was easy. Front side 180 on flat ground, I couldn't even imagine doing it.
So you said that you have skated at Drop-In that was in Lafayette, the old skate park.
Yeah.
Did you go there a bunch or?
I went there maybe sort of like 4 or 5 times. I remember the spine ramp, and I think I probably met you there actually, because I remember one encounter. I remember one encounter with this cocky kid who like was doing the same tricks that I was doing, like right after I would do them. And then he was like, "How long you been skateboarding?" And I was like, 3 years. And he's like, "I've been skating for 2." And this guy could like, he was better than I was, which was annoying to me because I thought I was pretty good. So that, I mean, that fits the description of a young Tyrone for me, but I don't remember.
Was I dressed in all green with a Skate Warrior shirt?
I don't remember if you had that shirt. I think we've missed an opportunity not calling you Skate Warrior all these years, though. That's going to have to stick.
Yeah.
I do remember when I met
Brannigan
you.
still calls me Skate Warrior, I think.
Who does? Brannigan?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do remember when I met you later, it was probably 94, 95 at the Village. And one thing that was, I remember asking you like, "So are you going to the show this weekend?" And you said, "What show?" And you were the first skater I met that didn't know anything about like the local, like hardcore music scene. So that was a
We
departure
did
from
a lot of flyers out in Dayton.
Yeah. But back then, like I thought that was all the same thing. Like if you were a skater, you had to be part of the music scene. And obviously that's changed by now.
Yeah, it's a little bit. So let's get into when you met a couple, like your first time meeting people, and that kind of go from there. So let's talk about our boy Jesse Corbett. When's the first time you met him, and how did that go down, or any good stories with him?
Yeah, Jesse Corbett, that would have been probably, we would have skated at what we called 180 Alley. That was the travel agency right next to the Village. And Jesse would come up there and we'd skate with Chuck Smalling, sometimes Chris and Derek Benedict, like Mike Knowles. John Clausen would show up there. Tyrone, you would be there. Sometimes Larry and Sega would be there. Like people always kind of were hanging around there. And Jesse, I always remember, would kind of come in and cruise around and do these high kick flips off the bump. He always had a really good kick flip and a really good style. Often had a toothpick hanging out of his mouth. But yeah, I remember, I don't really remember the first time, but I remember how he was always really laid back and would like, you could go by his house, which was near Columbian Park, and meet his mom, Dagger mom, who was always super nice. But yeah, I mean, Jesse was always just trying to talk positive and hang out,
Would you say he was probably the most positive out of the Daggers?
Yeah, a lot of the skaters that I remember, well, actually by the 180 Alley years, I think I met Jesse by probably like 96 or something like that. So I would have been skating a while by then. And I was more confident around skaters then. Like when I was young, I thought skaters like they would just kind of mind their own business and skate. But to me, I always thought they were judging you. Like most skaters wouldn't be like openly welcoming, but Jesse always was. I mean, he was always ready to give you a high five and a chest bump. Yeah. Some of the more welcoming skaters.
So what skaters were a little bit more unwelcoming back then? It's 20 years ago, so nobody's gonna get your feelings hurt.
Probably Chuck Smalling a little. I remember Chuck would always kind of vibe me when I was a little kid, No, but people, but for the most part, skaters weren't unwelcoming. They sort of like you were kind of minding their own business and would just say really short things and be like, yeah, like, do it. Let's go. Like just sort of focusing on the session,
So, growing up, skating around campus, you got to skate like pretty much the best spots around Lafayette and West Lafayette. What would you say your favorite spot is of all time that would be on campus?
Well, I think my favorite spot would just be skating all of campus, like cruising through it, like starting at the fountain or the coffee grinds at the mechanical engineering building. I remember my original dream when I started skateboarding was to be able to do like what I saw the guys do in Gleaming the Cube and Police Academy 4, like to just be able to turn the town into a skate park, like wherever you went to be able to do grinds and spins and shove-its. In fact, I remember when I was in 5th grade and Chris Green would ask me like, are you into vert or are you into freestyle? And I was like, vert. And of course I'd never seen a vert ramp, but that was the 80s legacy. And I remember saying like, but I wish there was a kind of skateboarding that was like street, where you could just like go on the street and do tricks on all the obstacles you came to. And so that's what campus skating was for me. Like I remember starting at the coffee grinds and doing, like a bomb drop, doing a little power slide, doing an ollie, shove it, doing bonelesses and stuff like that, doing bonelesses on everything I came to, running up on top of the loading docks and doing an indie grab off of those. Yeah, just skating through campus, shredding it. Even when I was a little kid, like when I was 11 years old in 91, yeah, always campus, whole thing. And the undertunnels, like even before I skated, I was sort of like, man, skating the subwalks, that would be awesome. Made it a reality.
Yeah, that's definitely a fun spot. So let's get into a little bit older Stephen Day.
Oh gosh, yeah.
When Stephen started getting gnarly. You started kind of skating bigger stuff and handrails a lot more than everybody else. What got you to like want to be the guy to test out the biggest gap to see if you could roll away from it or jump on the biggest rail to see if it was possible?
Well, I thought you'd ask me this, so I was thinking about it earlier. And honestly, I think a lot of it is that I just hate sitting still. Like when we'd be at a spot like that had a big gap or a big handrail and everyone else was maybe like sitting down or like didn't want to, like sometimes I wouldn't want to skate it either, but I would rather jump down the rail and potentially hurt myself than sit still for a few minutes, just sitting on my board was boring and I hated it. And yeah, I mean, so I can remember sitting at my board being like, no, I'm done with this. And then just getting antsy and bored and being like, oh, whatever, I'll do it. My earliest memory of skating a rail, you might forget this, Ty, it was with RT. It was with Dr. Ryan Taylor. We went to you and him and me, we went to the Stewart Center and you and I were alling over the flat gap. This was a long time ago. This was like 95 or something. And I remember RT running up the steps and board sliding the handrail. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, because sort of like a 180, I was like, handrails, those are for pros, like I'd never imagined that anyone could do a rail. In my mind, RT also front boarded it as well, but
for a little bit, he skated for a while. So I watch old footage I see sometimes and I'm like, I forgot he could actually, by the time I started skating, he could already 360 foot. So it's like, that would have been, he'd been skating for 5-6 years by the time.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, I board slid and front boarded the Stewart rails too that night. But again, like that was way back in the mists of time. So later on when we started to film for the Dagger video, and I was like, and I hadn't slid those rails in a couple of years at that point. And I was like, did I do that? So I figured that would be a good trick. And then just around the corner from that was the 10 stair rail. And I think that I just went past it with you one day, and, you know, true to form, whenever, I mean, you're always challenging people when they're at big spots to be like, try it. And I remember I had this cost benefit analysis in my head. I'm like, okay, I don't think I can slide a 10 stair rail because that's for pros, you know, but I was like, but you know, what's the worst that can happen is I fall and hurt myself. I mean, I fall and hurt myself all the time, but the best thing that could happen is I land this rail and, you know, it's legendary. So I remember jumping on it, and after a couple of tries, being like, oh my gosh, this thing could actually work. And I think it was only third or fourth try, and you were filming for our second video. This would have been winter of 97, probably. And I slid down that thing, and I was wearing a huge baggy sweatshirt, and it flew up over my face while I was sliding this 10 stair rail. And I just decided to hold it out. And so I just swung my board off and landed, and then the sweatshirt fell back down, and I had landed a 10 stair rail. I couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. The longest I'd done before was 5. Like, for me, it was just, I might as well have tried the full loop or something like that.
You know, what's funny is nobody has skated that rail since, because the runway is so short. Like,
Yeah, there's no
if it had
runway.
good runway, that would be like a rail people would skate, but that runway only being like maybe 8 foot straight on. And
No,
it's not like it's not a California 10, it's about a California 14. You know,
Oh no, that rail is scary because you can't jump down the stairs. I mean, you got to get up on that rail. And
you're not getting enough speed to clear it, like with the runway. It's like
no way.
You're getting
I
set.
50-50 my first round rail when I was in Bloomington. I was down there in college. This would have been 98 or 99 with my dad for a conference. And after the conference was done, I went skateboarding. And I remember I only had brought dress clothes, so I didn't have my skater clothes. And so I wore basketball shorts, and I met up with these Bloomington skaters I'd never met. And, you know, I kind of wanted to impress them and everything. And we were going by this 10 stair rail at IU campus. So I decided to try to 50-50 the thing. And, you know, again, like, didn't think that that was an actual thing, was 50-50ing round rails. But I was there with guys that I was hyped and wanted to show them what I could do, and landed that too. So I learned that, you know, I could do double digit stair rails. And
So
the rest is history.
would you say that when you started making Dagger videos is when you really started pushing yourself to get better at skating?
Yeah, I think the couple of years, I really hate to say it. Like, when I was 10 to when I was 14, I just didn't learn that many tricks. I was kind of isolated. And then when I started to skate the Village the year or two before the Dagger videos is when I started to skate, like with Chuck Smalling, with Jesse, Dennis Estep, with all the Daggers. And I started to learn a lot more tricks and get a lot better. And then I remember when the Daggers started up, I tried to stay out of it because you had set it up in opposition to the Ramp Locals. Never forget, the Ramp Locals came first. Because Jerome, him and his dad built this vert ramp, and they called themselves the Ramp Locals. And to be a Ramp Local, you had to pierce both your ears. And you immediately were like, we're making the Daggers to fight the Ramp Locals. And I was friends with all the Ramp Locals. And I wanted to skate Jerome's ramp too. So I wasn't getting involved in that. But once you started making a video, I wanted to be in the video. I wanted to have a part. But because I'd stayed out of it for so long, I only had a few days to film. So I made that in Quit Bitch and Start Killing. I had just that really short part. I'm wearing the same clothes for most of it. It's to the music of The Eye of the Tiger, because I had been boxing lately. I had the boxing gloves in my backpack, and I would challenge all the skaters to boxing matches. So you put Eye of the Tiger as my music in the first video. And yeah, I became a lot more serious about doing grown-up tricks.
Yeah.
To film for videos.
Well, the Ramp Locals, the Daggers weren't necessarily made to fight them, because they actually were before that a little bit, but it was more, it was more of a, I'll have to save it for my interview, but let's just say it involves me, BA, and our old roommate, Scott Dunbar.
Okay.
It's how it actually, we started saying Daggers because from thrashing, but there's a whole long story of that. And then it kind of spread about a year later to some skaters that we're skating with. And then I'll explain.
But you probably figured you had to really go public with it in response to the Ramp Locals stepping up and piercing their ears and saying they had a crew, right?
I remember though, what was kind of funny was like, after it started going, like, people were like trying not to be down with it at first, or like, we didn't really ask people. It was kind of like, they already knew, like they were already getting gnarly. Then I remember after the video came out, a bunch of those kids who skated it with Jerome or just were other village kids were all like, we want to be in. And we were like, nope. Like, I remember I had a bunch of kids asking after that first video, because I think it was like the first little local video that anybody had seen anybody skating.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
dogs. And I just thought it was so funny, because I was like, it's like, nope, only certain people get into this game. So speaking of it, how do you get into the Daggers? John was trying
well,
to
you got to go through the 36 chambers of dagger death is what you need to do. When you and I worked at the skate shop at Twisted Concepts, which was only kind of a skate shop, and people would ask us how to get into the Daggers, I remember it was like a rainy day at Twisted Concepts, and we decided to say that they had to answer the test questions right. So I actually wrote down, we call it the questionnaire, and they had to answer questions like, which team would win in a fight, Toy Machine or Zero? And that was just to filter out the posers, because anyone who knew anything about skateboarding would know that Zero was the toughest team and Toy Machine was the wimpiest team, except for Mike Maldonado. He was tough. And like, I think one of the questions was, what would you let Michael Jackson do to you for $23 million?
I remember that one. I thought about that recently. I was like, that was kind of a messed up question.
Yeah. Let's not go into that. But, and then the kids would come down and, and like little kids do, they took it so seriously. Like they heard that if they filled out a questionnaire, they could join the Daggers. And we started making up the chambers they had to do. It had to be like, well, you have to ollie more stairs than you've ever ollied before. You have to bang your head into that post over there 3 times. You've got to, I mean, I guess at that point we were the old guys who worked at the skate shop that used our position to like make little kids do hilarious stuff.
My favorite was chamber 18. You remember that?
18?
We would give them the paper. We'd go in that room, give them the thing, and they'd be like, it's number 18, and say, fight 2 daggers. We would just start beating them up.
Yeah, fight 2 daggers. And we would make them fight us until they actually started fighting, because usually they were too nervous to fight. And then we told them that they had to actually start fighting. And they would, like, eventually they would start actually throwing punches at us. And then we'd be like, okay, pass that one. And of course, the 36 chamber was crawling through, this tunnel, like there was a tunnel that was carved out in the wall that had pipes running through it. It wasn't much bigger than your body. And you had to go down there with a cigarette lighter. It was about 20 yards. It went underneath the alleyway out the back of the Twisted Concepts building. And you had to learn what was inscripted on the back of the tunnel. And I had originally learned it. I'd gotten out there with the flashlight, but we made them go with the cigarette lighter. And after they crawled about halfway down, it would get too hot to hold on to. And we'd make them go in the pitch dark until they're ready to light the lighter again. That's kind of mean.
It's super gnarly. Like, I was thinking about that too. It's like, that's a confined space. There could have been like, any kind of like oxygen deprivation, because it was only a hole and it was so far back there. And if somebody gets caught, how do you even get them out of there? Like,
well, it wasn't that small. Like, I mean, we could have.
It was like the size of like a teenage man. Like, it's like a 2-foot circle. It wasn't. It was pretty small.
Amanda Rumba did it.
Hey.
Amanda Rumba completed the chamber.
That's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, that was gnarly.
So, speaking of Twisted Concepts, what are some really good stories about Twisted Concepts that people might not know? Because a lot of younger kids don't know.
Well, so Twisted Concepts, it started out as, it almost seemed like an independent PacSun, kind of like that. It was run by the guys who worked there were these guys who were at the Skull fraternity. And it was owned by this guy named Jay Grasafi that apparently owned some restaurants like up in Merrillville and Valparaiso. And we hung around there, and because it was kind of like the skate shop, well, that and Amused were the skate shops. And we got on and we talked him into putting us on the team. And man, I remember the day I got put on that team. I was like, I have arrived. I got with Nate Olp. We both got on the team at the same day, and we were just ready to go out and just shred. And I remember I sucked that day. Like, I couldn't land anything at all. And it was really frustrating. So that was anticlimactic, but we were on the team, and soon the frat guys moved on. And so we got to work there, but it was the most bush league shop. Like, they never X'd out the register or Z'd it out. Like, the cash would just accumulate in the register. And every couple months, Jay Grisafi would come down and take the cash from the register. But eventually he stopped paying the bills, and the power company would call us and be like, we're shutting off your power unless you pay. And we'd call Jay and tell him about it. And he'd say, pay it out of the register. So you would go into the register and take cash and go to the power. Like, it was so bush league. I mean, people that I tell about it are convinced that he was using it as a front to launder money or something like that. But I always think that if you're going to launder money, you should have some proper business policies, which he did not have. And it was eventually he thought that we weren't managing it well. So he sent down an associate from Merrillville named Stinky to make sure that things were being run properly. And I'm like, man, if you're going to send a manager to make sure things are run properly, don't pick a guy named Stinky. Stinky was okay, though. And in the end, I remember you called me up one day sounding all scared, being like, Steven, come up to the shop. So I came up there and the shop was gone. Like, every single thing in the shop, clothes, boards, clothing racks, lights, the display cases were gone. And I called up Jay and asked him what was up. And he was like, it's in storage. You guys wrecked my store, as if it were like a real store to begin with. But he never called the landlord and said he was leaving. He never even locked the door. And so the door to this shop remained open and unlocked for months in the middle of the winter. And we just used it as a skate spot. Like, skaters would just walk in and walk down there and skate. Until one day I went back and saw the door was open. I was walking past it on my way back from class, and I found the landlady in there with one of her workers, and she was all wide-eyed. She was like, how long has this been empty? And I was like, oh, a few months, I guess. So that was the sad, weird ending of Twisted Concepts.
Yeah, that was definitely a crazy place.
And that's only one story of many. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening there.
Do you ever remember sleeping in the shop and sleep talking, and then getting things thrown at you?
Yeah, I slept there a few times. You had a bed there with a big cardboard sign you'd written in Sharpie. It said "Pimpin' ain't easy." You had hung that directly above your head, and you had the glowing stars in the ceiling. And yeah, I sleep talk like crazy, and I guess that you guys bullied me while I was asleep, sleep talking by throwing stuff at my head. No, I don't remember it because I was asleep.
You never saw the video where you get hit in the head with the hardware?
Yeah, I saw the video. Well, you should tell the story because you were the one who was awake.
I gotta find the video of that. That was great. Oh man. So yeah, Twisted Concepts.
We hid kids from the cops before. I remember kids would come running away from the police and we'd be like, go hide in the back room or go running out the back door. And then the cops came in and asked for them, and we'd be like, they went that way, like through the back door. And we'd send them on.
Earlier you mentioned Nate Olp. What was your first time meeting him?
I think you introduced me to him, but it was right after he had come to West Lafayette for college from Indianapolis. And you could instantly tell he was the most intense guy. For starters, he brought some gnarly tricks that you and I didn't really do, like lip slides and like stale fish grabs and stuff like that. And he skated really fast. And he was kind of friendly and grumpy at the same time. It felt like Nate was always grumpy. And he just drank prodigious amounts of Mountain Dew and ate a bunch of soft batch cookies.
I forgot about that.
Oh man, so much of them. But I remember he had a girlfriend, And I would be like, so we haven't introduced, haven't met your girlfriend before. And he was like, don't worry about her. She's stupid. I was like, okay. And when we went on spring break, we stopped at his parents' place and crashed there in Carmel before we went to Ohio. And I was like, dude, aren't you going to see your girlfriend? And he was like, no, I'm here to skate. Like he'd always just have these really gruff answers. Yeah, like Nate was always an intense guy. A good dude though. Totally the real thing, especially on a skateboard.
So who's gnarlier has always been the question. You or me?
Oh, and I think Nate is gnarlier than I am.
I don't
I'm
know.
only kind of gnarly. Here's the Nate did more long gaps and I did more high drop-offs. Except for that he landed the Ivy Tech ledge and I didn't. I crashed on it. He did a bunch of awesome tricks. So I don't even know if that's true down the Ivy Tech ledge.
Yeah.
But Nate would skate a long gap, like super duper speed, the kind of thing that you could hurt yourself badly on. He did get hurt badly. giving good tips. And so I do the math and say like, here's what a good tip would be. When I hung out with Jose, oh my gosh, like he took me to these really nice restaurants in Chicago a few years back where he knew the cook, and the cook would be like, I've got things for you, and send out all these free foods, like plate after plate. But then Jose would order Michelob Light after Michelob Light, like one after another, and run up a big bill in beer. But then he would leave a tip of like $50 or $60 or something like that. And so after getting free food, we would walk out of this restaurant having spilled like close to $100 in beer and tip. So, but I think that's like a food, and he's got a rep to keep up in the Chicago food scene. So if there's one Dagger that tips well, it's Jose. He tips really well.
Well, I was saying, you remember though, when that was like the thing, we would always go and try to do those insane tips at like Pizza Hut for like the cute waitresses and stuff.
Oh,
we'd be like tip like 70% of the bill, or sometimes 100%. That was stupid.
That was just if there was a waitress that we wanted to talk to.
What about first time you met John Clausen? Or good story about Clausen?
Well, Clausen, I just would have met him at 180 Alley at the travel agency near to the Village. And I, of course, was impressed with his 360 flip. Everybody was. He was always driving that little red car. He'd always show up with Nicole, and Nicole would sit at the side and watch us skate. You told me that Clausen had a temper, and I witnessed it one day when he almost got in a fight with the Jiffy Lube staff. We were skating the hill right across the street from Triple X, and these two Triple X workers, like young guys, like pretty tough looking guys, came out and were shouting at us. And I thought it was just a normal kick out. Like I think, and you were there too. I think you and I were just like, okay, like starting to leave. And Clausen just like gets in the guy's face, and the guy was ready to fight. And then John was ready to fight the guy. And I remember John like swinging his skateboard at him. And you and I moved into position around the guy. Like I was like, oh man, like this is the real skateboard beatdown is going to happen. Like I thought it had to happen sometime in my skateboard career. But it didn't. It finally de-escalated. I remember the guy threw like a ninja kick, like he almost kicked John in the face. But I was surprised at how aggressive John was at just getting kicked out of a place. But he's a mellow guy who listens to jam bands, and somehow he's also like the most ready to fight as well, or at least was at one point.
What about Glenn Houston? Do you have any good Glenn Houston stories?
I remember one time going to it, Glenn driving us to a demo in Indianapolis, a consolidated demo, but we were on I-65 and he refused to go any faster than like 35 miles an hour. And he was like, I'm just taking it easy nowadays on I-65. And there were cars like flying past us. And then finally but he didn't, I think it's because the car wouldn't go any faster because it was about to break. The car started to smoke and it eventually broke, and we had to pull over and never made it to the demo. Another time he took Jose and me to the skate park in Chicago. What was that park called just outside Chicago?
I think it was Drop-In.
Was that also Drop-In park?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big pyramid, the wooden pyramid.
Yeah. And we left really late at night, and Jose and I both fell asleep, and I was just sound asleep while Glenn was driving us back. And I remember waking up and being like, wow, looking around being like, there's a lot of trees around here. Like I don't remember going, like, where are we? I don't remember so many forests and trees around us. And Glenn was like, oh, it's just a really pretty area. I was like, okay. And then I saw the speed limit was 70 miles an hour. And back then I was like, I'm not aware of any 70 mile per hour speed limit in Indiana. And sure enough, like we were in Michigan. He had just missed a turn and like gone north instead of south. And we were well on our way to Grand Rapids, and he still thought that we were almost in Lafayette. And so I was like, Glenn, turn around. And I guided him back onto 65 South, and we made it back to Lafayette really, really late. But I don't know what would have happened if I wouldn't have woken up and noticed.
What was the scariest trick you ever did in Lafayette or West Lafayette?
Well, the scariest is going back to try to 50-50 the Elliott Hall of Music rail after I had tried to board slide down it and hurt myself very badly. And I did that same cost benefit in my head. I said, like, okay, so the worst that can happen is I get hurt. No big deal, get hurt all the time. Best that can happen is I land this 50-50, it'll be epic. And that's what I told myself right before I seriously injured myself trying to board slide it. And so this was a 50-50. And there was a Third Eye Blind concert going on at the Elliott Hall of Music at the time. So there were all these like grunge kids all around. Nate was filming, you were filming, there were different cameras, there was a crowd. And I was scared, but I was like, Steven, just do the ollie. You're going to land this. And I ollied up on the rail after a few tries, hung up, fell all the way to the bottom, separated my shoulder, and got very badly injured again. So my fears were justified there. I've stopped using, the last time I used that logic was just 2 years ago here in Richmond when I wanted to learn a flip and a half off the diving board at our pool. And I was really scared to do it. And I was like, what's the worst that can happen? And my one attempt at trying this trick off the diving board, I landed on the side of my head and ruptured my eardrum and had to have surgery. So it worked. It's worked a couple times for me to try scary tricks, but I've also gotten seriously injured about 3 times telling myself what's the worst that can happen. And one of them was diving into a pool. So yeah, Elliott rail, scary.
Do you think that rail is grindable if somebody walked in perfect, or do you think it would stick 'cause it's too soft?
No, it's grindable. Sure.
Would you wax it if you went back? If you could go back there.
It didn't stick on me because it was sticky. I just didn't get on it right. My back truck got on it, but my front truck missed. So
I know when you put your board on it in your trucks, it doesn't really feel like it that good. But Elliott Hall of Music, Stewart Center were the same rails, and those grinded.
yeah, no, I'm sure it would grind. It's just I just didn't get on it right.
I haven't seen
My front truck fell forward like a Smith grind.
Yeah.
I was ready for a 50-50, but I went into a Smith and I just pitched forward. And when I tried to board slide it, that was even worse because it was in perfect balance. I was like, I've got this. And I was just pulling off when my wheel wedged, the rail wedged between my wheel and my board. I've never heard of this happening before. And it just grabbed my board so tight that it was still just locked up there on the rail, and it just threw me right on my face. That was terrible. So that rail was treacherous for me. I wish I would have conquered it, but I think my worst and second worst slams of my skateboard career were on that rail.
What do you think about like this new generation, like Austin Bland backflipping it to fakie?
I'm a little jealous, but those guys are awesome. Their skateboarding's awesome nowadays. Guys are talented.
Pretty gnarly.
Very gnarly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the new generation has it going on. They are very good skateboarders. I love to see it.
Why do you think that the new kids are so much better?
I think there's a deeper talent pool. There's more people skating, more different kinds of people skating, more access to learning about other skaters in the wider world. I went 3 years skateboarding without knowing that not 3 years, 2 years skating, not knowing that a front side 180 was a possible trick.
Yeah.
Because you had to wait until videos came out, then you had to go to the skate shop or you had to get California cheap skates. And you mainly learned tricks and got motivated when you actually met other skaters from out of town or met other skaters from other crews. And if you weren't meeting those people or getting the videos, or sometimes then you just didn't have any you didn't know, your mind couldn't even imagine the things that were possible. So nowadays, I think just being on Instagram and seeing all these, just having constant access to all the things you can do. Yeah, I think it deepens the talent pool, gives people a better idea of what's possible. Yeah.
I got a question from Larry. He says he wants to know how you compare skating to soccer and which one do you love most?
Soccer is a team sport. Skateboarding is more of an individual sport, even though I've never been good at skating alone. I always want to skate with homies. I actually did a research paper that has been published on what skateboarding is all about. And skaters think it's about creativity, aggression, and their homies in 3 broad categories. Soccer I love because the creativity also, like I could never just be a runner or a swimmer. I think it's super boring. And soccer, I can be creative, just like in skateboarding in different ways. So those are some way that it's similar. But skateboarding is a bit more of an individual sport. You against the city, trying to bend it to your will. In soccer, you try to bend the defense to your will, and in skateboarding, you bend the city to your will.
Nice. So a few months back on Facebook, you guys were talking about how I would make you guys do tricks you don't necessarily wanted to do and push everybody. Do you have any stories about that?
Yeah, so Tyrone Taylor is an interesting person. He's a convener of people, and he wants things to be awesome and is willing to create videos and teams and brands and things like that. But Tyrone Taylor, like, he does not understand it if you are not trying to make things awesome like he is. And he'll get in your face and get seriously offended. He'll be like, dude, just try it. What's wrong with you? Yeah, Ty will badger you, and it gets so annoying. But it pushes people to do awesome tricks. So probably the worst, actually no, like most of the time it's like going to a big gap and he's like, come on, and you're like, come on, dude, try it, come on, why don't you just try it, come on, I've got my camera, just try it. And you'll be like, fine, and do it. There's one time I'm sure you were actually trying to bother me. We were skateboarding at Tecumseh, the front of Tecumseh, not the ledges in the back. We were skating the benches in the front. And you were like, play me in a game of skate. And I was like, no, man, I don't want to play skate. You were like, come on, man, play me in a game of skate. Let's play skate. I was like, no, dude. You were like, come on, just one game. I'm like, fine, I'll play you in skate. I wasn't skating well that day. I wasn't feeling it. And we started to play this game of skate. And the tricks you did were like backside 5-0, backside tail slide, shove it. Like all the backside tricks that you were good at and you knew I couldn't do. Nollie backside tail slide. You did all the tricks that you practice all the time and were naturally good at, and did all tricks that you knew I never practiced and are not naturally good at. I eventually got them, and I was so mad. Oh yeah, you made backside 5-0, like you put the bench down the curb and said that was a new trick. Like you did a backside 5-0 just on a normal bench, and then you did backside 5-0 down a bench, down a curb, and you were like, that's E. And I was like, that's not another trick. You must have been trying to bother me, but I was already in a bad mood. And I was like, fine, you win. And you were like, let's run it back. Let's play again. And I was like, I don't want to play again. But you badgered me again. And then you did all the same tricks again. It was
I was trying to make you learn how to do them.
It was so obnoxious. But then it got me in trouble because then we went to go drop me off at my house, and we stopped by Long John Silver's, which, you know, had the rope you could ollie over. It's a little tiny drop off, and it also had a bike rack. And you were like, let's skate this thing. And for some reason I couldn't ollie over this thing. Like I was usually could ollie over it no problem, but I couldn't ollie over this bike rack. Meanwhile, you ollied it and backsided over it, and you were like, come on, dude, hey, let's play skate over this bike rack. And I was getting ready to hit you with my skateboard. And just as the cops showed up, and they were being really obnoxious. And in the middle of their spiel, I never lose my cool like this. I was like, just leave us alone. And I threw my skateboard into the bike rack. And the cops were like, turned around to you. They were like, you better get your friend out of here before we arrest him and take him away. And you were all like, I'm sorry, officer. I don't know what's gotten into him. He's usually really cool and collected. He's usually not like this. I don't know what's gotten into him. I'll take him away. And you were like, dude, come on, Steven, chill out.
That was me that got into you. That made you are cool.
Yeah.
But
So
the question is, have I ever hit
lucky
you
I
in the
didn't tell
face?
that story at your wedding. I was thinking about it.
Have you ever been punched in the face by me?
Yeah. When we went on our first Dagger spring break road trip to Ohio, I tried to wake you up by like squishing some food in your face, but you were hip to it. And I got in close and you went wham and hit me. And you even said wham.
The video is super funny. It goes wham.
Wham.
Oh man.
I got punched in the face by Chris Green, the guy who got me into skateboarding too. When we were in 4th grade, we got in a fight over some turf in elementary school. And so I didn't like him. And the next year we sat next to each other in class and we became best friends. So, yeah.
Nice. Okay, I have just a few more questions. I know you gotta go, doctor.
Yeah, I'm here at work at 10 o'clock PM. It's terrible.
So, like, a lot of people don't know that you grinded a hubba inside of campus and you crashed into the door and broke a giant glass door. Tell the story of what you did, which I don't know any other skateboarder who would go do what you did.
Yeah, that was in the Wetherill chemistry. Wetherill, is that what it is? Chemistry building at Purdue. And I had classes in there. So I walked up these, I think it's 10 or 11 stair all the time. It has a big marble hubba next to it. And I wanted to grind down this. So I told you I wanted to do it. It was one of the very few times, I remember 3 or 4 times I can remember suggesting a gnarly trick and you saying, are you sure you want to do this? Like actually trying to talk me out of it. Like there were a few times you were actually concerned for my safety and were like, don't try this. But I was having trouble landing it and I eventually landed it sort of really sketchy, but crashed into the window and broke the window. And then we ran away and I felt really bad about it. And I was like, you know, I should own up to this. And I thought, what would Jesus do? Because I followed Jesus and I want to do the right thing. And so that was weighing on me. And so I went back to the building and I found a janitor and I said, hi, I broke a window here a couple weeks ago and I'd like to pay for it. And he looked really surprised. He said, come with me, come with me. And he called some other janitors around and they were like, we found the guy. And it turns out it had turned into a really big deal. Like there was an English professor had said he was seriously considering quitting the university. There had been a rumor had gotten around that skateboarders were walking around the building, smashing windows with their skateboards. Like among the faculty, it had grown really out of proportion. They were afraid of gang activity and stuff like that. And so this guy was really, really grateful. He was like, your mama raised you right. And I said, okay, well, send me a bill. I'll be happy to pay for it. You know, it's I said, what would Jesus do? That was the bracelets that we had back then. And they sent me a bill for half the cost of the window in the mail. So I think I had to pay like $40 or something like that.
That's not bad.
I had to pay $40 and I didn't get in any trouble for that. A year later, they caught me grinding in a different incident, I was caught grinding the handrail, the triple kink rail at the residence hall, and I got in big trouble for that. So no trouble for breaking the glass, big trouble for grinding the handrail.
And all you do is put some marks on that rail, right?
Just tiny little scratches, man.
Oh.
It was right at the end of my Purdue career, like after 12 years of skating on campus, the cops finally caught up with me. Their big bus.
How much was that?
$1,500.
So $1,500 to skate a handrail.
Well, what happened was the cops just took my name and I was like, no big deal, because they didn't take our boards. See, I was with Jose. They didn't even take our boards. They just wrote our name down in their little notebook, which you're usually stoked about. You're like, oh, good. You know, I got off easy. But then they went and asked the residence hall if they wanted to press charges. They said yes. So I got a vandalism charge and I got court costs, had to pay the cost of the rail, had to pay community service, had to pay a lawyer to take care of it for me because I was in California that summer. I was on an internship And every penny that I earned from my internship, I had to pay for all those things I just listed. And so it was like zero for the summer. But I chalked it up to, I guess I just paid back 12 years of skateboarding on Purdue campus, pay the cost. But that was the big bust right
So
there.
you being like a rail skater, what did you think about when Chris Metallic moved to town? And can you explain Chris Metallic to people who might not know the legend of Chris Metallic?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Metallic, like you meet him, I remember thinking that he was just like a total jock, like he just seemed like he just seemed really preppy. And then you skate with him and he's like, oh, this guy's a pretty good skater. And then you go to skate a gap or a rail and all of a sudden, like he does tricks you've never seen. Like the only guy who skated a rail as well as Chris Metallic I've seen at that time had been Tyrone Olsen. That was on video. That was on the Osiris video. Metallic, he could get up on these huge high rails and grind them forever. And it was something else. And he wasn't just a rail guy. Like he had some other, I mean, the more you skated with him, the more you saw how good he actually was. I mean, he was really, really talented, Chris Metallic. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Have you talked to Chris Metallic lately?
Well, just a little bit on Facebook, but over the years. So I only see him on Facebook, but that's it.
What about Brandon Aldridge, BA? You have any good BA stories?
I didn't know him nearly as well as you did because you grew up with him, but I just skated with him sometimes and he was just gnarly and said crazy stuff and would be willing and ready to break things, especially if the video camera was rolling. But yeah, that's about it.
So, what would you say your like legacy is? Lafayette skating, West Lafayette. Like, what people are gonna remember you for? What did you?
Well, I guess I just learned recently from watching the John Clausen interview that I'm the rail guy. So yeah, maybe the rail guy. When I was skating the contest in Indianapolis, I remember Scott Wilson was commentating the contest and he said that while I was doing my run. So that's what it would have been. But I mean, shoot, I guess time moves on and I don't know if I left a big legacy, just skating around town for a long time, doing big tricks and gnarly tricks because sometimes I would just run out of tech tricks to do because I wasn't, couldn't do all the tricks I wanted to do. So I'd get bored and try gnarly tricks. Yeah, that's what I did. I did have, sometimes you've asked, I did, when I was just about to get a job teaching, I was a senior in college and I went to go be a substitute teacher to get some money on the side at West Side High School where I went to school. And I was subbing for a junior high classroom in the shop class. And I was reading the sub instructions aloud to the class. And I was like, so like, get out your textbooks and you're supposed to answer these questions and you're supposed to do this thing and turn it in at the end of the period. Are there any questions? And this kid raised his hand and goes, is it true that you did a switch kick flip off the dust ledge? I was like, wait, what? No, questions about the assignment. And no, I didn't do I said I did a switch ollie off the dust ledge. I did a switch kick flip off the stage, but no, incorrect. So that was funny. I actually got some questions when I was substitute teaching from the kids, but they're all old now, that was a long time ago even.
Didn't were you a teacher of some sort for Neil Daniel? Do you remember meeting him and having him in your class?
Yeah, Neil Daniel, the dark horse. See, I was the student teacher. I student taught the seniors at Lafayette Jeff when he was a senior. So I had half the econ classes, but he was in the other econ class. So I didn't actually teach him, but it was funny because we were already friends and we would go out to eat lunch. So I would together. So I known him from before. So technically I was faculty at the school while he was a high schooler. Yeah. That was really weird.
Some say that Adrian Gephardt's the last Dagger. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's amazing how long the Daggers have persisted. You know, we were a 1990s crew, and I mean, I'd say most of the kids, most of the skaters nowadays weren't born yet, right?
Yeah.
So just the fact that that there might be some kind of that the word Daggers might still have some sort of meaning or currency is a pretty big deal. But Adrian joined on the Daggers at the very end, and obviously he had so much talent that we'd like to be associated with him. And he's now been skating for such a long time and has been skating so well and is so good that I guess the Dagger name still kind of lives on through him. So I don't know. I guess whether it goes on, that'll be something for the next generation to decide.
Yeah. So who were your like favorites back in the day? Like local, who were your local legends? Or dudes you looked up to?
I mean, the West Side skaters, Chris Bloom, Jim Enos, Roddy Rice, then Jay Buck, the LFT guys. Yeah, the whole LFT crew, I was not part of it, so I was kind of intimidated by it. So I don't know if they were my favorite, but I figured they were the best, you know, wanted to be able to hang. Yeah.
All right. Who's your favorite skateboarder from back then?
You mean like pro skater?
No, just like skater in the area. Like, you know, some people really like Jonathan, some people like Brandon, people like Clausen, like Larry, people like Clausen. I don't know.
I don't know if I had a favorite, you know, they were just my friends, and I just wanted to, when I was little, I wanted to hang. Like I wanted to be good enough to skate with that crew. And then once I got bigger, I just was happy to have friends and skate and have a good time, you know.
Nice. Is there anything
Everybody had their own individual personality and added a lot of color to the scene, and just a ton of funny stories and hijinks and things like that. Yeah.
I'm sure we could do like 6 of these with stories.
Yeah, man. My interviews run more than an hour now. Did you
Yeah.
know that?
So I was saying we'll continue a different one another time. But
The other interviews are like 20, 25 minutes. I've just
those are
covered a lot of the real.
edited. This one's going to be raw.
Okay. Yeah.
This one's just recorded off Zoom. I don't even know. Hope it saved it.
Yeah. Speaking of raw, look, I'm missing a tooth because I got it kicked out playing soccer recently. So I'm still keeping it gnarly.
Nice. How many tries did it take you to do that crooked grind the other day?
Say again?
How many times did it take you to do that crooked grind you posted the other day?
2, second try.
Woo, that was a good one. All right, you know, say peace out to everybody. I'm gonna stop it and see how this, hopefully I can save it. Stop the video. Now, stop the video.
No, not that, man. You hit stop video, that just turns off your camera. Hit record again, or just we can end the meeting and then it'll automatically go.
Now what? Now how do I save it?
Just click the record button again, or just we can just end the meeting.
Wait, but I mean, where will the video go to?
It'll save to your hard drive automatically in your documents folder.
Okay, so just press stop video and then it'll be saved.
Yeah, and then once the Zoom call ends, it'll process and save, and then you'll have a file.
Okay. Well,
So you're safe. You're safe.
I just press stop video. So
Don't do stop video that just turns your camera off. It makes you look silly.
okay, so just do leave conversation.
Yeah, just leave. Yeah, just either hit the record button again, or we just end the call. We say bye.
Peace. I hope it recorded. We're gonna do
It
this
is. It's
again.
recording now. I want you to put this part at the very beginning to edit this to the beginning so people can see the struggle.
Click.
Yeah. Cool, dude. Well, I actually need to do some more work before I go home. So you can